Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This one is on the dark side of Nulgath Farming. I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of Nulgath Farming. If you guys enjoy this video, do me a favor and tap that like button, smash the subscribe, and turn on the notification so you don't miss any of my uploads. A lot of my viewers are not subscribers, so I really appreciate it if you can tap that subscribe button. I also like to thank all of my Raven Squad members. If you guys are interested in joining my YouTube membership, you can tap the join below this video or check the link in the description. The Nulgath Farming started off very promising, especially for people who used to play AQ Worlds or still plays AQ Worlds. This would have gave the Nulgath saga the Nulgath experience, because up until the introduction of Bamboozle and Crag, it really didn't feel like a Nulgath saga. It still kind of doesn't, but it does because of the Nulgath Farming. So that's the very first pro in regards to it. When this system was introduced, I was really excited. You're then introduced to another character, Skew, and if you are familiar with the AQ World side of things, then of course you would recognize him, and this was another nice touch. He also had similar quests that you would do, very similar style to obtaining certain materials that you would need for crafting certain things, and this is another nice side of it. And then of course you're introduced to several different weapons, the very first of which was the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath. Now it did have these requirements, and at this point I would like to take the opportunity to go check out what the requirements were for the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath in AQ World. This is the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath in AQ Worlds. In order to obtain this, you needed to complete the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath quest. The Phoenix Blade of Nulgath quest required you having the Phoenix Blade, which you would get from a drop, and then you needed 10 diamonds and 5 dark crystal shards and 5 tainted gems. You also needed the Uni 13, which was the contract of Nulgath, and the Undead Bruiser, which was dropped by the Bruiser. This is how you would obtain it. However, in order to do this quest, you needed the Oblivion Blade of Nulgath pet. And to get this pet, you needed to complete the Oblivion Blade of Nulgath quest. This in itself had requirements. You needed to be level 30 and have your Doom Knight class to rank 10. You also needed Diamond of Nulgath, 10 of those, and 10 Dark Crystal Shards, as well as the Sword of Nulgath. The Sword of Nulgath is obtained by either completing the Assisting Crag and Bamboozle or by just doing the Purchase Sword of Nulgath quest. The Purchase Sword of Nulgath quest required you having the Voucher of Nulgath Non-Mem, the Dark Crystal, and the Dark Macaw rune. Assisting Bamboozle one required having the Essence of Nulgath, Nulgath's Approval, Archfiend Favor, the Nation Round 4 Medal, and Sparrow's Blood. You also needed to have Crag and Bamboozle in your inventory. This is a pet that you could obtain for 5,000 ACs or for the reward of the Assistance of Nulgath quest. This quest required you having the Drudgeon of Assistance, which could be obtained by purchasing the 5,000 ACs or by getting rewarded from one of these two quests. The purchase Drudgeon requirement was the Nulgath Minion Voucher, or you had this one right here, but you did need the Crag and Bamboozle, so it would be rather pointless. So you can see the rabbit hole you would have been following to get the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath in AQ Worlds. The balance here is fair, I find. In order to obtain the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath, it has these requirements, which do take some time to obtain, and once you've accomplished it, it's well worth it. Further installments of the Nulgath saga brought you more stuff like the 8th Betrayal Blade of Nulgath Champion, and this gave you a pet, which the pet would then give you access to a weapon, the 8th Betrayal Blade of Nulgath, and these were the requirements for this. You also had more requirements for the 8th Betrayal Blade of Nulgath. This is where things started to become more complex, and not so much complex, but more the grind became more and more. Of course, you also had the option of going for this one right here. Now, this also was fairly balanced, and the rewards are worth it. So this is fine in itself, having the initial stuff having rather steep rewards. I'll give an example of how to obtain the Abaddon's Cruelty in AQ Worlds. In AQ Worlds, the weapon is called Balor's Cruelty, and it is a drop from a boss. So it's a whole lot easier to get it in AQ Worlds compared to in AQ3D. When the SKU NPC was brought in, we also had another NPC that we were introduced to, and this was the Dragon Slayer. This is one side of things I was not personally fond of, and the main reason why is you are given some quests which you can obtain, some of which are fine, others which promote you to farm a world boss, and this is something where I am not a fan of world bosses. I will never be a fan of world bosses. I don't think mobile MMOs should have world bosses where you need to wait on a timer, because you literally rely on this thing being in the lobby you're in, or just having to wait 7 years for the thing to spawn. It becomes extremely irritating, and this is where my issue with the Nulgath farming began. We were given pets to make the farming easier. For instance, you could obtain the Crag pet, which did give you access to Bamboozle's quests as well as Crag's quests, and equally to Gaz's quests as well. So that was a nice little thing. We also got more pets as well. Another example being the SKU quest pet, which does give you more quests on top, so you are able to just use these ones right here, and they come in rather handy for what their purpose is. Let's head to the Oversoul. In here you have SKU, and this is where you were introduced to these weapons right here, these two weapons right here. You were also introduced into other quests, but these quests were related strictly to the world bosses, and again, another reason why I was not too impressed with that. This gives you an example of the world boss right here. Void Knight also spawns in the Wasteland as well, and they're on a timer, so you can't just farm them whenever you wish, and it becomes extremely irritating waiting for them to spawn. Now, there are ways of speeding up the farming, like we have in AEF, where you can use the Dragon Slayer and the Void Slayer roles to basically find out when these things are being spawned in what lobbies, with people drop codes and stuff like that. So there are ways that we have made it easier, but that's on part of the community. That was the AE Federation Discord server, like that's my Discord server and stuff, that were making it easier. It's not the game that makes it easier, it was the community that makes it easier, and as soon as this area dries up, it will be impossible for anyone to go for any of these items. So the next item you would get is this one right here, the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath 2, which was an upgrade from the first Phoenix Blade of Nulgath. This was another long grind that took quite a while to obtain, of course, with similar requirements to the first Phoenix Blade of Nulgath. And it's around this time that you realize the sole focus of farming the Nulgath items results in two things. One is world bosses, and the second is Noxus Dungeon. And if you've run the Noxus Dungeon as many times as I have, you are sick and tired of it. And this is another problem with the Nulgath farming here, is you're very limited on what you're doing. 90% of what you're doing is world bosses, which requires you jumping from server to server to server to server, using player codes, or running the Noxus Dungeon over and 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 over. So we're not even getting to the heart of where the Nulgath farming becomes even more insane. Welcome to the Forge of the Forlorn. Now, another pro to Nulgath farming is the look of the items, because you can get some really, really cool looking items in here. Definitely worth going for just for the cosmetic value alone, because some of these weapons and armors and whatnot look really, really cool. So I would definitely recommend farming these just for the visual look on them, not even just because like these look really cool. Let me give you an example just by showing you this armor right here. That is a great looking armor, and if my helm was off, you would see the face of it, which makes it equally cool, which is in here. There it is. Like, that is a really cool face attachment to it. But yeah, it is a really, really nice armor, definitely worth farming for. Now, the requirements of these items can become rather complicated. In and of themselves, they're not overly difficult to obtain. However, the fact that you want to go for multiple items, or the fact that some items require, for instance, I'll give an example. This one right here, you would need to get this material to get this. That's fine. But then you need to also get this, and this in order to get these ones, because not that one, but these ones require having the Void Knight. So to get this, you need the Void Knight. So you're not just farming the 8 diamond of Nulgath, you're farming the 6 for the previous one, not to mention all the tainted gems, all the crystal shards, the soul gems that you need on top of what you already obtained for the Void Knight. And that's just for the armor. Then you have the shoulders, and then you have the gauntlets, and it goes on. And that is just for these ones right here. This is, of course, excluding all of the weapons if you're trying to go for certain ones and whatnot. It makes it very difficult to go for all of them, and it makes it very difficult for casual players like me. I have been burned out with the Nulgath farm simply because of the over amount of farming that I would need to do to get anywhere in the game. Another thing we were recently introduced to was the anomaly weapons. And again, these are really insane grinds. So you have the Phoenix Blade of Nulgath 2, which is a requirement. If you've already farmed for it, you know what the struggle of that was. You need a contract of Nulgath. You also need the diamonds and all the rest of these material on top of that. Not to mention, of course, the 5 million that is going to cost for a weapon that gives little to no benefit. I mean, it gives 800, but you're losing almost 2,000 health. So it's definitely not an ideal weapon for stats, but if you want to go for it visually, then it's your choice. Of course, you also have this one right here, which are not more insane things on top. You have this one as well, and there's more of these coming. Now, we were given some dailies that does make it a little bit easier, but not a whole lot easier. Also, this doesn't even touch, it doesn't even touch into the Hex Orb and the Blood Orb. Let's take a look at these. Now, the Hex Orb gives you some quests, and these quests give you the entire Hex of Nulgath thing. And this is requires the Void Knight of Nulgath. I showed you the requirements for the Void Knight and what you need. On top of that, you also need this. All these requirements right here. So again, another long, crazy grind. And you would be getting the armor pieces. You also, of course, need to do the same thing for the helm and for the weapon. A lot of grinding just to get this item, these items here. Now, to get the Hex of Nulgath on AQ Worlds, you were required to do the Hex of Nulgath quest from the Arcane Orb. The quest required the Sorcerer class being ranked 10. It also required the Void of Nulgath, as well as these materials here. Now, these are kind of similar to what we need for the current thing. The problem is, you only need the Void of Nulgath for the armors. You don't need each individual piece. Also, to obtain Diamond of Nulgath and the other stuff here, you can obtain them much faster in AQ World. So time-wise, and even to rank this class, it does not take any time to rank a class in AQ World. So time-wise, this is way faster to do. To obtain the Void of Nulgath, you needed to do the Void Knight deal. And the Void Knight deal required you being level 20, having rank 10 evil, and getting a portion of a soul, totem of Nulgath, the Phoenix Blade, and the tentacles of the Overlord. The Phoenix Blade is a drop that you can get, and the tentacles is an item that costs 1 million gold. To have access to the Hex of Nulgath quest, you would need the Arcane Orb pet, and to get that, you would need the Diamond of Nulgath, 3 of them, Totem of Nulgath, and the Dark Crystals, as well as the Uni 13. So although you do have requirements that would take a while, it's still nothing in comparison to what AQ3D farming is. And this is largely due to the way that farming is done in AQ worlds. It is much faster, there's far less farming, and it doesn't involve world bosses, which take 10 hours to spawn. So, not literally 10 hours, but it sure feels that way. Taking a look at the Blood Orb, so to get the Blood of Nulgath armor set, not including the weapon or the helm, you need the entire Void Knight armor set. Again, almost. You also need these things as well. And then, of course, you've got the helm you could get, requires these things, and then the weapon on top. So again, another insane grind. If you've purchased both of those pets, expecting to go for both of them, unless you have an insane amount of time, this is not something that you can definitely do. Possibly many in years, but nothing anytime soon. Again, it depends on how casual of a player you are, or on how much time you're able to invest into the game. Let's do a comparison with AQ World. The Blood of Nulgath in AQ Worlds is obtained by doing the Blood of Nulgath, and this is obtained from the Blood Orb. This quest requires you having your assassin class to rank 10. Also requires the Void of Nulgath. I already showed you the requirements on how to obtain the Void of Nulgath. You also need these materials right here. Again, to get this would be much quicker than getting it in AQ3D, at least half the time, if not less than that. It'd be very, and to get this ranked up, no time at all. Now, you do require having the Blood Orb in order to obtain this. To obtain the Blood Orb, you need to do the Blood Orb quest. The Blood Orb quest requires you having 3 Diamond of Nulgath, 2 Totems of Nulgath, and 7 Dark Crystal Shards, as well as the Uni 13 to obtain it. So not too difficult. Similar to the Arcane Orb, it's not one that would take too long to do. You'd be able to get that done in just a short while. While obtaining those pets in here only costs 2,500 Dragon Crystals, which isn't too bad. And so obtaining the pets are easy. It's what's behind it that's going to take so long. 2 major differences between the Nulgath farming in AQ Worlds and the Nulgath farming in AQ3D. When they were first introduced into AQ3D, it kind of followed the AQ World farming method. You had an open world option, but you also did have to run the Noxus dungeon, which is something that wasn't a problem at the beginning, but I thought more and more options would be introduced as we went along. Unfortunately, once the world bosses were introduced into the scheme of things, that became the #1 way of farming. And that to me is the major problem, having basically just these 2 options, world bosses or Noxus dungeon. And that's basically the essence of Nulgath farming, which is definitely not the way that it felt in AQ World. In AQ World, you had multiple options, and all of them were open world based, not isolated to dungeons or to bosses that take, forever to spawn. I posted a poll on YouTube. If you guys want to be notified about my polls or comments I post on my community section, make sure to tap that notification bell so you don't miss them. This one here is saying, do you like the Nulgath farming in AQ3D? And these were the options right here. 7% said yes, 58% said no, 10% said I don't care, 18% said yes, but it's too grindy. And then some said no, but I like the items. So if you're putting together the percentages of the actual no's, then you've got 58 plus 7. And this is how many people don't like it. And then you have ones who do like it, and it's 18% saying that it's too grindy. So there are some comments here. I won't go over them in this video, otherwise this video will be an hour long. But you guys can read these comments if you want. I haven't actually read all of them just yet, but I for sure will, and I'll reply to all the ones I can. But it is very, very frustrating that they've come up with a system for Nulgath farming, but it's not being likened by the majority of the player base. And that is upsetting, because as an AQ World fan, I really was hoping it was going to follow the AQ World format. The style of quests are very Nulgathy, and that's nice. The problem is the monsters that we're having to fight. That's where the real issue, and the fact that you're limited to what you are fighting. It's basically, like I said earlier, world bosses or Noxus, and that's about it. At this point, I think it's too late to go back and slash the requirements by half, but honestly, that's what they would need to do in order to make this more available to everybody, is to just take the requirements of the current items and then basically cut the requirements in half. Honestly, I feel like this is a punishment for casual players like myself. If I had all the time in the world, then I could definitely get the materials I need to get the items I need, but I don't have that kind of time. And when I do have free time, I'm usually investing it into making content for the game. Now, as I mentioned, there are pros to the Nulgath farming, like the look of the items, because the items do look great, but I hope something can be done about how these items are being introduced. What do you guys think of the Nulgath farming in AQ3D? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.